Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our third series of Fuel 30. Today, we are going to talk about eating your way healthy. We have some great content, and we're really excited to share. My name is Sarah Klein. I'm an integrative nutritionist health coach. We're going to talk more about that. And on the call also is Dr. Beth Riccinati.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you today on our third of three series about eating and nutrition, etc. Today, Sarah and I are going to share 6 tips. I'm going to let her begin. She's going to give the first 3, and then I will follow with the next 3. We do have time at the end for live questions, so I would love to encourage you all, as you think of them, to please type away and let us know. Thank you.
Awesome. So over in or on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a chat bar. And if you have a question along the way, go ahead and post it up in that chat bar. And then at the end, we will be able to answer them live, or you can always be pulled into the call if you're brave enough to come on live and ask them live. So hold all your questions, and we are going to share our screens, and we're going to get started. So we'll see you on the other side of the presentation. Okay, all right, so eat your way healthy is our topic today. So as I said, my name is Sarah Klein. I live in the southwest corner of Colorado called Durango. Hopefully some of you have heard of it before. And I'm an integrative nutritionist, health coach, and avid yogi. My belief system is that health goes much deeper than what we are eating. True health is a balanced recipe that consists of good, healthy exercise, clean, whole foods, positive thoughts, healthy relationships, and meaningful work. So I always like to say that I don't believe health is a number on a scale or a pant size. It is the quality of your energy and the quality of your inner dialogue. And then my approach is kind of a 5-pillar approach. I'm definitely in the realm of clean eating, so focusing on whole foods, mindfulness, movement, and accountability. So I'm constantly asking, why do we do what we do when we know what we know? And I believe that the practice of mindfulness and meditation can help us to peel back the layer and understand that, but further accountability and support is what allows us to make those health changes. All right, so I'm going to share 3 tips with you, and then Dr. Riccinati is going to share 3 as well. So the first tip is food for your plate. And the idea is to build a perfect plate at every meal, or at least strive to build a perfect plate. So the American Heart Association states or suggests that we should have about 4 to 5 servings of veggies a day. Now ask yourself, do you honestly have 4 to 5 servings of veggies a day? And a serving would be a tightly packed cup of spinach. That would be 1 serving. Then also, fat is our friend. Fat has absolutely been demonized in the past, but fats, good healthy fats, are critical for optimal health. And then understanding the difference between whole grain, whole wheat, and white carbohydrates. So we're going to briefly talk about that. So when we're building the perfect plate, we want to think veggies. We can never have enough veggies, and we want to eat a rainbow of veggies. And think of veggies for snacks to further, cut up carrots, celery, cucumbers, all of that great veggies or great snacks. Then next is healthy fats. So healthy fats can actually help you burn fat and lose weight. Yep, it's true. We need healthy fats to hold a balanced, healthy weight. So they help us to eat less, feel more satisfied after meals. Healthy fats are critical for brain health. It helps to lower inflammation. Healthy fats are good for our healthy cells, which is basically what we're made up of. So fats are absolutely your friend. And some healthy fats would be things like avocado, olive oil, fish oils, flax and hemp seeds and oils, nuts and seeds, macadamia nuts, cashews are really high in good healthy fats, all your coconut products, and then organic full fat Greek yogurts, fish, eggs, and I always like to give the push that the fat-free movement is gone. And when we see fat-free on a label, we want to be a detective for sugar. Usually it's super high in sugar if they've taken the fat out. And then on our perfect plate, we want to make sure we have a healthy, lean protein. And Dr. Riccanati is going to talk more about protein. But my plug here that I want to add is a lot of times we think of animal protein when we're thinking of protein. However, I encourage you to look beyond that and also include plants within your protein sources. So things like beans, lentils, whole grains, especially quinoa, leafy greens, green peas, nuts, and seeds are also great sources of high quality protein. Now let's talk about whole grains. And we're going to demystify the grain thing here. So I'm going to flip into a little picture of what a grain is. So we've got to learn the anatomy of the grain to really understand what the difference is. So first, on the outer layer is our bran, and that is the outer layer of the grain kernel. Then inside is our endosperm. Now this is the largest part of the grain, and it's rich in carbohydrate, protein, and many other essential nutrients. Then, as you can see on the center, we have our germ, and the germ is the source of vitamin E, B, and other important minerals. Now, when we're talking about a white carbohydrate or a refined grain, it basically, the milling process has taken the grain apart and it only leaves the endosperm. And what happens then is that the glucose or the sugar, the energy within the grain, hits our blood sugar dramatically or rapidly right away. So in a whole grain, we have the bran that helps to protect that sugar and slowly release it in our blood stream. So when you are thinking of white carbohydrates, you can think of sugar. It's basically having sugar. The way that it impacts our blood sugar is the same as pretty much a candy bar. So what goes up must come down. So when our blood sugar spikes, it goes up and then it comes down even further than it spiked. And this is the important take-home note on white refined carbohydrates. They're quick energy and then there's a deeper drop. So then what's the difference between whole wheat and whole grain? Well, it's again due to the milling process. They take apart the grain, and then how the marketing industries allow it to be labeled as whole grain bread, for example, is because they inject the bran or the germ back into the product. So that is not a whole grain, right? Because it's been broken apart and then put back together artificially. So what would be a whole grain? Well, it's what looks as close to its natural state. So whole grains are seed-like products that you have to cook and prepare. So things like brown rice, quinoa, oats, amaranth, some barley, and millet. So what do we do about this? Well, knowledge is power for us to be smarter than the marketing industry, right? The marketing on the outer layers of, or the outer labels, the front labels will trick you. So we're going to be smarter than them. And we know now the difference between white refined carbohydrates, whole wheat, and whole grain. If you have any questions on that, please post that up in the chat. I'd be happy to talk more about that after. All right, tip number 2. So eat for a clear mind. So I'm going to take this tip in 2 ways. One is when we have a plan in place and when our blood sugar drops, we are able to make good choices. We talked a little bit about this in our last presentation, but having a plan is critical for eating healthy. We are busy, it's undeniable. And when we take the choice out, when we become hungry, we allow the thought pattern to clear up in the sense that we have a clearer, more focused choice on making healthy decisions. So, and then on the other side of that is when we start to balance our energy through whole healthy foods by building the perfect plate, as we were just talking about, we will see the impact on our focus, our attention, and our ability to have a clear mind. Why? Well, we all know the story, and that would be the latter story in the sense that when we're eating highly processed foods or foods that are high in chemicals, high in sugar, we start down that slippery slope of highs and low of our blood sugar. And when our blood sugar crashes, one, we don't make good, healthy decisions. And two, what do we reach for? Well, we tend to reach for sugar or caffeine to pick our energy back up. Then we get into this roller coaster ride. And like I said, what goes up goes down, but in this case, it goes double further down than it went up. So we want to, it's the chicken or the egg, right? We want to feed ourselves good, healthy foods, cut the sugar out of our diets so that we change our baseline. And don't just take my word for this, try it for yourself. The more you can decrease sugar in your diet, the less you will crave it. You change your baseline. It's pretty amazing. And then to further that, if anyone has a mindfulness practice, if you've ever tried to meditate on a lot of sugar or a lot of caffeine, you will know that those products impact your focus. If you try to sit down and meditate after a cup of coffee, your mind will bounce all over the place, and it will be quite impossible to keep it still. So how do we do this? We want to decrease the sugar in our diet. We want to become savvy by reading labels and understanding how much sugar we are consuming honestly. So things like sauces, salad dressings, packaged dinners, cereals, they all have a high level of sugar. So decreasing the amount of chemicals and sugars that we're putting in our body through processed foods. And then we can eat for brain health. So omega-3s, which are found in flaxseed oils, flax seeds, hemp seeds, and wild salmon help to increase our focus. Blueberries help to increase memory and cognitive functions. Dark chocolate, high percentages of cacao. So when you're looking at your chocolate bar, usually search for one that has 70% or more of cacao. Those are high in antioxidants, good for brain health. Avocados, beans help to provide a steady stream of energy to our brain. So those will all help our focus. All right, tip number 3 is to eat foods that support your liver. So our liver is our change agent system in our body. It takes anything that is toxic to us, it changes it and allows us to excrete it safely. So anything that our body produces, like estrogen and cholesterol, the liver's job is to change it and shift it, but also things that we ingest. So things like caffeine, sugar, refined carbohydrates, alcohol, chemicals that are found in processed foods and conventionally raised animal products, all those have toxins within them, also environmental toxins, pollution, and stress. So as you can see, our liver can have a heavy load, right? It has a lot of responsibilities to get those toxins out. So we want to support our liver. And I just want to use this quick analogy. If you put your arm out in front of you, spread your fingers, your forearm leads into your wrist leads into your hand, and you have your 5 fingers off of it. Your liver is kind of like this in the sense that it has a one-way entrance, so by your elbow, one-way entrance, and it has 5 exits. As it goes through the liver, it hits 2 change stages. Now, just like freeway traffic, right? When it gets jammed up on one end, you can see what could happen. You have these 5 exits, but if we're overloading everything that gets in there, it gets a bit clogged. So we can eat to support our liver, right? So there are lots of great foods that help the natural detoxification processes of our body and helps to excrete waste. So what are those? Garlic. Garlic helps to activate liver enzymes. Grapefruit. Grapefruit is high in vitamin C and antioxidants. Antioxidants essentially bind to free radicals or bind to toxins within our body and help us to safely excrete them. Beets and carrots, which are high in beta carotene, which help to stimulate and improve liver function. Green tea, leafy greens. Leafy greens literally help to suck up toxins in our blood. Some other things, apples, avocados, olive oil, lemon, walnuts, dandelion. You can find some great dandelion tea, which helps to support the liver, and turmeric, which we were talking about last session, which is kind of a super spice and also helps to support the liver. So with that, 2 ways to support the liver. One, boost it by eating some of these helpful foods, and then also try as much as possible to decrease your liver load by being aware of what the liver is responsible for changing, and giving it a little break now and then. So those are the 3 tips I have for you, and please don't hesitate to post any of your questions over in that chat room, and we'll get those answered in the live Q&A after. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Riccanati.
Thank you. I really appreciated hearing that, Sarah, and learning a bit more in particular about whole grains and the difference. Seeing that visual was quite good. For those of you who don't know me, I am a Santa Monica-based women's health and wellness physician. I first worked in New York City and then in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic in both women's health and in wellness. And I fervently believe that healthy living begins at home. It begins in all of the rooms in our home: the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom, and the pantry. However, with all that said, I really think that it's the kitchen that's probably the most important, because I really think at the end of the day, it's really about food. I believe that food is medicine, and we have the ability, by the choices we make about what we eat, to live healthier lives. And not only for ourselves, but again, thinking about the home, healthier lives for those also in our home, so kids and partners and etc. My approach is therefore very specific, very practical. I like to talk about ideas that we can all do and that we can do very easily. And today, I'm not going to go room by room as I did in the last webinar. I'm going to focus just on some food and 3 ideas. The first is I'm going to speak about protein, and then I'm going to speak about some foods that interact with sleep, and I'm going to conclude with talking about foods for exercise. So with that said, let me start with my first tip, and I'm going to talk in particular about food for energy. And what is really exciting is that we can actually, by the foods that we eat, we can improve our energy, we can feel better, we can feel revved up and ready to face the day, or we can choose to eat foods that leave us feeling really sluggish and not so good. I'm obviously going to choose the former. And a great way to do that is to think about incorporating more protein into your diet. Why? Because protein is absolutely essential for every cell in our body. For example, you may not even realize that your hair and nails are made almost exclusively from protein. Protein is the fundamental building block for our bones, for our blood, for our skin, muscles, really the whole kit and caboodle. And importantly as well, protein is used to build and repair tissues. So it is a critical nutrient. However, unlike the other 2 macronutrients, fat and carbohydrate, protein does not get stored in our bodies. And that's really what I want to focus on today. Because it is not stored in our bodies, we need to replenish protein. I don't believe, though, that it's easy to do just once a day. I think it's much more effective, because we need it continuously, if you can spread it out over the course of the day. We need to replenish the protein every time you're having a meal, for example, or a snack, etc. Think about protein. So what to do and how do we go about doing that? What I like to do is to think about having approximately 30% protein of each meal should be protein. That can be hard to do because we don't always know exactly what protein is. I find myself constantly reminding our children about what actually is, what foods have protein in them. So what I want to do now is focus a bit about the different types of foods that you can have. Because at least for me, and maybe for you all as well, when I was growing up, protein meant animal sources of protein. And I really didn't think about other options. And in particular, it really meant processed animal protein, things like hot dogs and sausages and deli meats, etc. And although once in a while those may be fine, the problem with processed animal protein is that it's high in saturated fat. And certainly as a physician, I get concerned about that because it puts you at risk for diseases such as heart disease and diabetes and some types of cancer. So rather than have to worry about all of that, what I instead want to focus on are some healthy, high quality types of protein that you can add into your meals throughout the day. So what do I mean? I mean food such as grass-fed meat. If you still do want to have meat, try and look for grass-fed meat. The good news is that is becoming a much more available option, which is great. In addition, fish is a great source of protein. In particular, though, I recommend wild fish, for example, wild salmon. What's also nice about that is it's loaded with omega-3s, so you're getting not only protein, but you're getting a nice healthy fat with that. I like dairy as a source of protein, but I'm very specific about it. I really only recommend organic dairy because of the risk of growth hormones, antibiotics, etc. in things like milk, for example. Eggs are a fabulous source of protein as well. And again, I'm recommending organic, cage-free eggs. And then for those of you who really want to focus primarily on vegetables, beans are a wonderful high protein option. Beans probably have the most protein from any vegetable source, in fact, and there are a variety of beans, so you have a lot of option there. Nuts are a great source of protein. I particularly like cashews. Some people like almonds. There's a whole array of nuts. I like to keep some in my car, and when I need a quick snack, then a handful of nuts does the trick. They're easy to store, easy to transport, and a great source of protein. And then finally, whole grains are a wonderful source of protein. I'm not going to spend too much time on them since Sarah did such a great job explaining them, but whole grains are great for protein, and I like them because they're also, like fish has omega-3s, whole grains are a great source of fiber. So you're getting a twofer, which I think is wonderful. So quick sum of idea number one, you need protein because your body doesn't store it, and you need to spread it out across the day. And finally, you need to think about the quality of the protein that you eat. Okay, moving on to idea number two. I want to talk about foods that can impact your sleep. I am obsessed with sleep, as you may or may not remember from our earlier webinars. And the great news is that we know enough now to know that different types of food can actually improve your sleep or in fact can hinder your sleep. So then you can make educated decisions about what you're eating if you need to improve your sleep. I want to start by talking about 3 reasons that we may actually be sleepy, and then I'm going to talk about what you can do to counteract that. So one way that we find ourselves sleepy is actually eating foods that have an abundance of tryptophan when you don't necessarily want to be doing that. What I mean by that is that, for example, carbohydrates are a food source that makes tryptophan very available to us in our brains. And sometimes, i.e. like when you don't want to be going to bed at night, but let's say at lunchtime, if you have a pasta heavy meal, for example, a big carb load, it's likely that you're going to be sleepy afterwards. So you want to think about that. Carb-rich meals really do make us pretty drowsy. For example, pancakes on a Sunday morning, and then you wonder why you're tired an hour later. It's probably because of that. What else makes us drowsy? Melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone in our body that regulates our sleep-wake cycles. In our brains, tryptophan is converted to a neurotransmitter, serotonin, and serotonin in turn is converted to melatonin, which is secreted by the very tiny pineal gland near our pituitaries at nighttime. That can, when it's all working properly, it's really great, and it actually does help to make you sleepy, which is why we have the sleep-wake cycles. And then in addition, another sometimes way that we get tired still thinking about the sleep-wake cycles is in the middle of the afternoon. We're actually naturally programmed to have a dip in our circadian rhythm in these sleep-wake cycles at 2 p.m. and then again at about 2 a.m. Well, hopefully you're asleep at 2 a.m. But at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, part of the reason you may be feeling drowsy, in addition to if you just had a carb-heavy meal for lunch, is also this natural dip in your circadian rhythm, in your sleep-wake cycle. So what are you going to do about that? The good news is there are actually lots of things you can do in terms of what you eat to improve your sleep, and then also what you can avoid eating, again, to improve your sleep. So let's start by talking about some of that. There are two food groups that I want to talk about that actually impact what you will impact your ability to get a good night's sleep. And then I want to talk about two food groups to avoid that might be impacting your quality of sleep. So first of all, you can eat foods that have melatonin naturally, as opposed to taking a melatonin supplement. And I'm actually not a fan of melatonin supplements because there's more and more research that is showing that that may actually interfere with your own body's natural release of melatonin. So I'd rather get it through food than through supplement. And cherries, for example, are a great example of that. And it's springtime now, and cherries are in season, so it's perfect. What I recommend is to have a handful of cherries about an hour before you go to sleep at night. And it's a great source of melatonin, and it can help. In addition, tryptophan, which I talked about earlier as being a cause sometimes of making you feel drowsy when you may not want it, i.e. a big carb-heavy lunch. But at nighttime, it's a perfect time to make sure you're ramping up your tryptophan levels if you have trouble sleeping. And a great way to do that is actually with protein. Protein is the building block for tryptophan. So having a bedtime snack that is loaded with some protein is great, and with some carbohydrate, because that will help to release the tryptophan in your brain. So some ideas for that are a bowl of cereal, for example, with milk, or maybe some cheese and crackers, or even peanut butter and crackers. Any combination of protein and carbohydrate at nighttime will actually raise your tryptophan levels and hopefully help you get a good night's sleep. So those are two food groups that will help with sleep. Now let me talk for a moment about two food groups that might actually interfere with your sleep. The first are anything that triggers heartburn. If you have heartburn and you have foods such as tomatoes, chocolate, mint, peppermint, spicy food, and then you try and lay down and go to sleep, you're going to exacerbate your heartburn and have difficulty sleeping. So just be mindful, for those of you that do have heartburn, about not eating foods that trigger your symptoms close to bedtime. In addition, I want to briefly touch on alcohol, caffeine, and energy drinks. Many people find that having a glass of wine, for example, might be relaxing at night. However, for others, it really can interfere with sleep, and in particular with getting that deep restorative sleep that is so necessary. So definitely be mindful of the amount of alcohol that you're drinking at nighttime. And caffeine too close to bed can also interfere with sleep. Most of us have some form of caffeine every day. The National Sleep Foundation says, in fact, that 4 out of 5 adult Americans have at least one beverage, and I know I have several. So you want to be very mindful of the timing of when you have your caffeine, and do not have it close to when you're going to bed if, in fact, that is an issue for you. And then briefly, I want to talk about energy drinks for a moment. They're really just a concoction of caffeine and sugar and amino acids. I don't like them at all. And I want to make sure that if you're drinking them, you're very aware about what's in them, and be aware also that they're going to interfere with your sleep after that initial buzz when they wear off. It's similar to what Sarah mentioned earlier about what goes up must come down. You're going to get that buzz, and then it's going to fall from, it's going to drop, and your sleep's going to get disrupted. So I recommend avoiding them. Let me move on now, time is tight, to idea number 3. And I want to talk about foods for exercise. It actually matters what you eat if you're planning to exercise, both what you eat before you exercise and what you eat after you exercise. This will both improve your workout and will help your body to repair and recover after you are done working out. So let me talk a little bit about what you can do before, during, and after. Before you work out, you want to make sure that you have enough fuel, if you will, on board. Our bodies really are just machines, and they don't run well on empty, just like a car doesn't run well on empty. So you want to make sure that you have food on board. And I recommend that you keep snacks and food easily accessible, whether it's in your pantry at home or in your car or your office. It all depends on where you're going to be prior to working out. In particular, I really like complex carbohydrates, things like trail mix and bananas. They make a great fuel source for exercise. They break down very easily in your body into glucose, which is our body's main energy source. I also like these complex carbohydrates because they take longer to break down than simple carbohydrates, things like white bread, white pasta, and rice. And the reason why I want that longer amount of time is so that I don't have the crash. For example, if I'm off to a spinning class and I've just had a simple carbohydrate, I'm going to have a crash in the middle of that class, and that's not what I'm going for. I like to keep stashes of nuts and dried fruit around for this reason, and a quick handful before going to work out is a great way to make sure you have enough energy on board. The timing of it matters too. You don't want to eat right before you work out, and you don't want to eat too far in advance. I mean, if you ate lunch at 12 and then you go work out at 4, that's probably too long to not put something else in your body to really maximize your workout. So some simple guidelines. Ideally, if you're going to have a big meal, you really would have it probably about 3 hours before. If you're going to just have a snack, make sure you've had a snack maybe 2 to 3 hours before working out. And if you haven't had time for either of that, just grab at least a piece of fresh fruit before you work out, so you've got something on board. And that actually pertains as well to those of you who exercise first thing in the morning. You do not want to get up straight from sleep and go work out on an empty stomach. You've probably not had anything to eat anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. So it's very difficult for your body to basically exercise in a fasting state. At the very least, just grab a piece of fruit on your way out the door, so you've got something in there to help you out. It's really important during exercise to hydrate. I cannot say that enough. Drink a lot of water. Keep that water bottle full, both before, during, and after. And then finally, once you've worked out, it's really important to replenish all that energy that you've used up. And there are 2 important things I want to talk about. One, you want to replenish the energy that you used from the stored glucose. And you also want to replenish the protein that was used to repair your muscles. Carbohydrates are a great way to repair that sugar that was used. And eating high quality protein will repair the muscle damage from exercise. Obviously, you can take supplements for this, but I much prefer food. And again, I recommend keeping easy, accessible food on hand so that you can achieve this goal. Things that I like in this case that have both carbohydrate and protein are full-fat Greek yogurt. Maybe add some berries, or maybe have a wrap with lean protein, some hummus or cheese. But you want to eat something ideally within 30 minutes of working out, so that your body has time to rest and recover. So I know I raced through that, but we're short on time, and I want to turn it back now to Sarah and take your questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much for that awesome information, Beth. And so our last slide is kind of our conclusion in the sense of what to do from here. And you can see on this slide, both Beth and I are very active on social media, and we give daily tips. So we'd love you to follow us. Beth, also on this slide, you can see her newsletter sign up, and she's a fantastic writer and is always writing amazing wellness blogs for all these awesome sites. So stay connected with her through her writing. And I do over the phone, in person, if you live in Durango, or over Skype, nutrition consultations. And I always like to start my programs with a free or complimentary 30-minute nutrition consultation. So if you'd like to book that and get some personalized tailored support, I would be happy to book that with you. So you can send me an email or follow up with there will be the recording will automatically be emailed out and our contact information will be on there. So that's how you can stay connected. I'm going to end sharing my screen and we are going to, go through a couple questions. So we had Jane ask a question. I don't know if you saw that, Beth.
Yes.
But some other foods that boost melatonin. If you want to go ahead, I answered it a little bit, but I'd love to hear if you have any other suggestions on that.
You took my list, Sarah.
Sorry.
Those are great foods that Sarah has commented on there. In addition, foods that have B6 in them, foods like hummus, actually are a precursor to melatonin as well. So I recommend quick snacks like the pineapple, the cherries, etc. But you could also have some hummus and crackers, for example, and achieve the same goal.
Awesome. And I wrote barley on that list, and I just wanted to point out that hurled barley is a whole grain. Pearled barley is not. The way that the milling process occurs on that, you would never know the difference in taste. It's just having a smart eye when shopping. So make sure you go for the hurled barley versus the pearled. Just a fun little fact on that one. We had one other question, or maybe a couple more, but can you eat too much healthy fats? And of course, any good thing you can do too much of, right? You can run too much, you can do too much yoga. But in the sense that, yes, adding healthy fats into every meal is great. It's great for your brain health and all that we talked about. But too much is you can always do too much. So if you're eating the whole bag of nuts, yeah, that's probably too much. So keeping it in moderation, being smart about portion size, and most importantly, eat mindfully. So while you're eating, stay present with your food, stay present with your body, and start to know or listen to the signals of when is too much for me, when am I full, and give your body enough time to send that message to your brain. And then Beth, did you have any add-ons that you wanted to add?
I think we're all set. Thank you so much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. And if you do have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either of us through our websites.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. It's been our pleasure to spend this half hour with you all. So thank you so much for your time and your attention. And please, again, reach out with any further questions. We are 100% here for you. So thank you and have a lovely rest of your day. Take care.